You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 60 and it's another Friday episode. My name is Clark from 5 Card Guys, along with Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess on Instagram. We're actually recording this show just a couple of days after the Sports Card Expo in Toronto just ended, and we'll get into talking about what we observed from the biggest local card show here in Canada. But before we do, off the top, I wanted to quickly get your guys' thoughts on the LeBron James Panini Flawless Triple Logoman card. There seems to be a lot of discussion on whether the collector who got the card submitted to PSA did the right thing by just getting it authenticated by PSA without a number grade. But before you guys give me your opinion on that, whether that changes the value of the card in your opinion, I want to know where you guys stand on getting one of one cards graded. Some people say, what's the point? It's a one of one. And others say they would absolutely get a one of one graded no matter what. What do you guys say?
I was always in the boat that you got to get a one of one graded just because you got to prove its authenticity. Because you don't want, a fake kind of out there, of the possibility, right? So,
sure.
Like I always thought, one of one should be graded. You want it slabbed, right? So
yeah. It's surprising though, like whenever I post on 5 Card Guys, like one of ones that are listed.
Why are you yeah.
There's so many people that say like, what's the point, man?
I have all my one of ones graded. It's just it's in the slab. Yeah. Right?
I agree.
And I agree. I think in this case too, it was I'm guessing the person who submitted it basically believed that it was probably going to be a PSA 6 or 5. Something was, I could tell you that those cards don't come gem mint. Very, very rare, right? Especially, patch cards. They're a tough grade, right? So I think it wouldn't really hurt the value if you've seen a PSA 6, but at that point, do you want a PSA 6 or a PSA 7? In that, not that the grade matters. Yes, they have the point there that the grade probably doesn't matter. But I think at that point, just having it authenticated makes sense, just so that it's in the slab. It's a 101. You could enjoy it, and you're not really worried about like any counterfeits or anything like that, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement. I don't understand the hate or why there's such a huge debate on this. Some people are want to be purist and they like it coming from the original packaging with a Panini seal on it. I guess I understand that. But like you're talking big time money. Of course you want it authenticated. I don't know, in my opinion, right? And if it is no better than 8 or a 7, it's probably smart to get it just with the A, get the authentication. Because for me, if I have a one of one and I see it being like a 7, wasn't the Lewis Hamilton Superfractor like a 7? Or was it? Right. I think of something else. Anyways.
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah. But like when I see a 7, it probably, I think it actually does change the value a bit. It shouldn't, but it does because that's,
right.
That's marketing, right? So, for me, it bothers me too. Like I don't want to see a 7 on my one of one. So if that was me and that was my card and that's my PC, I'd probably do the exact same thing, get it authenticated. And then when it comes time to sell, at least there's no messing around. There's no question marks of like the card, who you are, like it's authenticated, it's PSA.
It's definitely not a PC item.
Yeah. For me. No kidding.
Yeah. No, it's like, it definitely, we talked about this before, right? When it's that scarce, especially for a one-on-one, the grade doesn't really matter, right? But having said that, people use that as a negotiation tactic. It's like,
Right.
oh, it's a PSA 7, so it's not worth as much.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think you could use that logic.
You're
But
right.
I do feel like on the flip side, like a Superfractor or a 101 that is a PSA 10 does attract a lot more
sure.
attention.
For
Like people are like, wow.
They'll give it a
you know.
bump. Yeah.
Yeah,
for
for
sure.
sure. And I think that's where I guess the divide is. It's just there's a half the people saying, why are you even grading it? And then there's actually a camp that basically says they shouldn't even authenticate it. They should grade it 1 to 10, which is fair. I believe that should be the real option, where there is no just authentication. It's just give the grade and give no option to really, just put an authentic label on it, right? Because think they're a grading company, right? So I don't know. Just take the authentication out. Just say everything that they grade is authentic, right? And give it 1 to 10 based on their scale, right? So there's that camp too. And then there's the camp that really don't care. They think 101 should be slab. I fall under that camp, but
me too.
I mean, you could take any perspective here, and you have an argument at the end of the day, right? So
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I would do the same thing, get it authenticated, especially for a monster card like that. And PSA right now, at least, is the go-to grading company, right, for that. So it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how much it ultimately goes for, because it's going to Golden, I believe, right, on auction.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see who the buyer is if we ever find out.
But I think they
information.
kind of set themselves up for this because they hyped it and marketed so much. You got to think about sustainability in the future. Are they going to try doing something like this again? If there's a weak sale, let's just say, falls south of, I don't know what a weak sale would be these days, but like, let's just say under $2 million, right?
Yeah.
Would all that hype and buzz be worth kind of like, will people join that next year and the year after? Kind of not saying that you're going to have a logoman every year, because I don't think Panini's not that dumb to kind of replicate it, and I don't think they will. But for future huge breaks like this, there was this huge hype that this card might be the all-time, north of 6.6 million potentially, to be the record-breaking, sale, right? So I think there's a lot of hype and marketing behind it, and you see it already. You see it all over, plastered everywhere. Golden Auction's kind of marketing it, right? So I think they need a strong sale. I think for the sake of their reputation and business as well. And I believe that they will have a decently strong sale. I wouldn't say it would be a record-breaking sale for the most expensive card, but I would think that it would be like we discussed before. Like, I think we said like 3 to 5 million, which is nuts. Which is like, to me, that's a crazy price, but I think you need to, based on the hype,
Yeah.
You guys have a prediction?
Yeah. I was going to ask that, yeah. You know what our track record is when we try to guess these high-end cards.
I'll say between 1 and 6.
1 and 6. Come on, that's
Right.
too wide.
If we're gonna play Price is Right, I'll go under 1.
No way. It's
Definitely.
gonna go over 1.
This is your proven track record, John. It's
is.
just going to continue. I don't think it'll go.
It's like John's
take
betting
a risk.
$1.
I know.
John's betting $1.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I'm doing.
That's true.
Listen, you know
He
what?
thinks-
For me, we talked about this before. If I'm in the space of buying $1 million cards, like that's my thing. For me, I'm not touching this card unless it's at around $1 million or less. Like I think there's just too much.
But John,
Yeah,
how about if you had $100 million? Would you really
I'm not
like?
I'm not like.
You know what I mean? If you had that
at
much
this point,
money to spend,
I just
does
think
it-
at this point you're just being, whoever's buying this, it's just such a polarizing card, and I think half the internet is gonna mock whoever buys this card. It's got such a negative thing like attached to it right now that you're gonna be that clown. You're gonna be known as that clown that bought it for 2.5 million or 3.7 million. And I don't want to, if I'm spending money, that's way too risky for return on investments. of millions of dollars, I'd rather put that in something else. Now, if it's under a million, like it's a really good price where no matter the negative marketing, I think I can make money on this in the future. You know, like once the marketing wears off and all of that stuff, I think there's a price for that. So that's why I say if I had the money, I am not paying over $1 million. I'm not paying over $1 million. For me, I'm not. And it's not just because
I don't think many. I honestly don't think many personal like collectors would. Personally,
sure.
I wouldn't either. Personally,
no, but let's say just like strictly investment too.
No, but you're for me, it's like one from a business standpoint. Golden can't take a hit like that. Right. There's no way. They have safety. They have to have safety under a certain amount. Like I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Plus, we're talking about fractional share companies who overvaluate a lot of stuff, and they're a target. And there could also, in my opinion, be a group of people that are going in on this as well, right? So I think there's just too much outside of the hobby logic that apply to this scenario.
Right. Like collectible app could go for this and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Right?
It becomes a very, very, I guess, desirable from a fractional standpoint, I think. But like I said, it would be overvalued. But there is only one, right? So there's a story behind it. I think there's just too much business, too much, capitalism involved in this one. So I think it's a different game. It's totally like hobby logic definitely applies to, this one, right? We're not,
Yeah. Funny enough, you know who I think would save the marketing of this card? Drake. I think if Drake bought it, people probably wouldn't clown him. It's like, he got the card that he wanted.
Right.
And that might save the image of this card.
Right.
Let's go, Drake. Go buy it. I'm going to guess it's 3.56 million. All right. I'm putting it on wax.
Okay.
3.56 million is my prediction.
That's so crazy.
That's pretty accurate, or like pretty like precise there.
Yeah.
Specific.
Oh man.
It will be the highest LeBron James card, in my opinion, no doubt.
Wow.
Yeah, I think north of 3.5. I'd say I don't think it's going to
higher.
Yeah, I'm going a little higher than that, but I'd say 3.5, between 3.5 and 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys are
Is it worth that? No, it's probably worth $30. The cost of actual material. But we'll multiply that a bit.
All right, we'll see. We'll revisit this once the sale is made, and I'm sure we'll.
We're probably wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Somehow we're all going to be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to our Friday discussion today, which is something we did after the local card show we went back to in November, I think, and that's to discuss what we observed from the most recent card show. Did we see any trends in what people were buying or selling? How big or small were the crowds this time? I was thinking maybe, Hyung, you can start off since you were there the whole 4 days with your booth set up.
And I'm absolutely exhausted.
I was going to ask, how exhausted are you now?
A lot of energy left my body. We'll leave it at that. But you know what? Overall, I had a great time. Lot of great conversations. That was probably the highlight. In terms of the actual show, I feel like a lot of people were selling or trying to like get rid of some of their slabs, and it was weird because I did a walk around too, and a lot of dealers were I guess really high on some prices, just on list prices, where they were kind of hoping that they would, I guess, get people to, somehow negotiate on like base cards that were like 200% overpriced, right? So I noticed that with a lot of dealers, and also obviously that goes to show that the market is slowly tanking. So I think a lot of people didn't want to sell for comps, at least right now, right? So it didn't make sense. So I think a lot of trades went down though, because that's when you can make parallel moves, and even moves where you're not really taking profit off of one another. It's more so a lateral move where both parties are okay with it. I actually probably did close and this is Canadian dollars, close to $20,000 worth of like deals / trades at the end of it, right? So it wasn't too bad for me. I know other people that I talked to, guys like DC, he's known in the Toronto community. He had a really good show as well, and there were opportunities there at the end of the day, right? So I think
Sure.
overall it was just back to cards again, right? We've kind of forgot about who cares what's outside of this, this 500,000 square foot, venue. Right now we're all essentially hobbyists, collectors, investors, whatever you want to call it. And, there's a lot of people that traveled, and I noticed a lot of companies as well. Newer companies that never kind of existed, I'd say. And I see it more of a trade show than kind of like when we went to card shows, it was all like, it's like a huge room full of trading essentially, right? But now you're actually seeing companies, go around presenting their, app or their company to, show their value. And they were actually hustling. There's companies, from the US that came up for the show. And yeah, overall, I think, there was definitely forward progress, I think, even though the venue was so big that it might not have seemed like there was a lot of people, because there was like spurts of like bursts. But when it was busy, I think it was pretty good in terms of the volume. Yeah. So, but overall, yeah, no complaints.
No, good points. Like, I definitely agree with you on, well, from the dealer perspective, a lot of cards being overpriced, because I think as we're transitioning in the hobby right now, as things are, tanking a little bit, the dealers obviously don't want to lose their money and wants to try to get out. But I think the next card show, whenever the next big one is, I think there'll be November. Yeah, I think if the market is still the way it is, the dealers will have to make adjustments. You know what I mean? Right. They can't just keep the prices high because they're not going to sell any. I'm sure a lot of them went away disappointed not being able to sell a lot of their cards at the current prices.
For right? Sure.
Right. So, and I agree with you with the companies. Like, you saw Whatnot, you saw PWCC there. Yeah, you saw all these US companies, grading companies. And
thinking of that, I think going forward, you're going to see more of that, because if you think about it, there's more value attending those shows as a marketing thing more than selling. And as people realize that before, it was like hobbyists that would set up booths, right? But now it makes more sense to bring your slabs, walk around, don't pay the premium to set up a booth, right? Because there's really no point, because you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that that's going to happen all across the board, but it's definitely in terms of the ROI that I think people are shocked. They think that, in the height of the hobby, you could have put anything out there for sale and it'd probably sell, or you could make a deal on it, right? But I think as things slow down, it's just not worth it for, like I said last week in the episode, when people realize the ROI is not there for these card shows, right? You're better off going there as an attendee, paying, just the cover charge, and then going around and hustling with your slabs, right? And let the dealers, the bigger companies, as they grow, it becomes more of a trade show type show, which could be good or bad, right? So
sure, I totally see that.
I wish one of us went to the one of the trade nights so that we can report back the difference.
Yeah, you know what? I was just so exhausted. I don't. That was the last thing I wanted to do. I was doing trades all day for 4 days. So
literally, I went there for 2 days, and Hyung was there for 4 days. And the 2 days I was there, like, Hyung was talking nonstop.
You know what? Like, once you get me going, man, and I have a couple of the coffees. I think I had a Monster. That day too. Yeah. So it's just like I was wound up and then just nonstop for 4 days talking. And I could do that, right?
You're hustling, man. Johnny, you were there for 1 day. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm certainly not the person to talk to about reviews, because I was way too busy. I was anticipating going like all day Friday and all day Sunday, which ended up turning out to be 2 hours Sunday right before close. So the impression I got obviously was, number one, I did not get to go around to see every booth. I did not get to hustle and bustle and try to accomplish trades like I wanted to. There just wasn't enough time. And then obviously, the feel and atmosphere was kind of winding down. Like it wasn't as busy, I'm sure, as maybe Saturday was. You guys can make the comparison. I've kind of felt like the venue or the number of vendors was a lot smaller than the last time they had it. When was the last time they had it? In September? No, September. Anyways,
it was November. November probably. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it was short-lived for me, but I had been talking to somebody outside of the show that was going to be there as a part of a dealer. So I already had a goal in mind. Hyung has been helping me sell a whole bunch of my slabs and move it into a Soto update refractor, which I was able to do at the show. So I had one main goal in mind, and I was able to.
That's a big card, man.
Thanks to Hyung, yeah. A lot of help from Hyung, and I appreciate it.
No worries.
We're going to talk about what we picked up, but do you want to talk about how you got the refractor?
It was actually a 3-way trade, right? It ended up being that.
Yeah.
I actually, at the end of it, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do my walk around last 20 minutes of the show. And then I run into John, and he's like, yeah, I'm about to do the deal. And I'm like, oh, no way. Where is he? Let's go. So we go together, and he's about to, pay him cash. And by the way, this is 2018 Topps Chrome Update Refractor number 250 or 299? 250, I think.
Yeah. PSA
250.
10.
So PSA 10, massive card. Massive Juan Soto card. Yeah. So we ended up, anyways, I ended up selling my Gatorade Bath PSA 10 to.
That's a monster card too, yeah.
Yeah, it's a monster. I wasn't planning on it, but then it was a 3-way where John basically got the Soto refractor. I sold basically the Soto Gatorade Bath to the dealer, and then John basically gave me the cash, right? So it ended up kind of like, and it was like the last 20 minutes of the show. So I kind of ended off the show with a bunch of cash, which was good. But John ended up picking his card that he was targeting for months now, right? Mm-hmm. So I know he's been in conversations with the dealer for the past couple months. So it's good to see that, he actually landed it for sure.
Yeah. And shout out,
that's cool.
I don't know if he wants his name out on the podcast, so I won't mention it for the time being, but I'm sure I'll shout him out on IG. He was so easy to deal with, like really fair. We talked about a month and a half ago when prices were obviously a lot different than it was now, and we kind of agreed on a price. And he told me what he paid for it at the time, which was market value. And he's like, I'm willing to let it go. He actually ended up picking up a BGS 10 version of that card, which is also which is a monster. So hence he was willing to let it go. And then
he had a PSA 10.
And he had two PSA 10s.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
And then fast forward to the show, and I was just talking to him, listen, I ended up selling everything that I was supposed to sell. But I'm selling everything at 20-30% less than anticipated, right? And then also the last Soto, I don't know if you saw it. He's like, yeah. He was kind of disappointed, but he's like, yeah, I saw it. It went for X amount. And I'm like, and it's a lot less than what we had originally agreed on. So I'm like, listen, I don't have as much cash on me because of what happened. Are you willing to come down closer to that comp price? And he's like, I don't think I can do that. And I had a next option price I was willing to go to, which was a little bit up, but not too much. It was still kind of close to the comp price. I'm like, listen, what about this? And he was like, yeah, I can do that for you. So went to think about it. I went to Hyung. We talked about it for a bit. And it was one of those things where, and this is another thing to mention, and I'll shout out Great Curator, one of the YouTubers, and he talked about this in one of his episodes. And it's a little bit of a tip when you're at a show. Dealers are obviously motivated to sell. They want cash at that show. They have a target, and that's cash.
Yeah.
I could have easily talked to this guy after the show, after the fact. But I kind of talked to Hyung, and I was like, you know what? He's motivated now. Like, I put cash on the table. He's staring at cash. He's motivated, no matter, even if the deal is a lot lower than he expected. When you're staring at stacks of cash, you're probably in that moment, kind of like a when in Rome moment, you're probably going to take it, right? Whereas if I ended up thinking, okay, you know what? Maybe this Soto card is going to go down even further because the market is tanking. So actually, I'm going to take the strategy of talking to him in another 30 days. Maybe we can work a deal because he's in Toronto. He's based out of Toronto, and if you're offline and you're off the show, the guy can easily be like, you know what, talking on IG, I'm gonna hang on to the card. You're just not in that mood, that selling mood, right? So that's a tip too. Like in the moment, that if you want a card from a dealer and you show them the cash, maybe it's the time to make the move at the show because it's a time where you can pry a certain card off of a dealer's hands for a certain price, right?
It's a good point, especially on the last day of the show.
Yeah,
last
people
day of the
are
show
willing
too.
to deal for sure.
Yeah,
good point. No, that was a good grab. I love that Juan Soto refractor.
Yeah, and that was the move. Like you kind of cut your losses of some slabs you don't really care about. You cash out on those, even though you're at a loss. You're just moving it into a bigger card where it has potential legs in the long term, right? So in terms of that, I believe that's a great move. It's always good to kind of go that route, especially as we approach our economic downturn. That's not a bad move, cashing out on the lower end stuff and, putting it into some things that kind of hold value just because of the rarity, right? So
100%. Yeah.
And it's not even like I paid a high price, right? We talked about this as well. Sorry, Clark.
Your cash-in price is
like even
low.
though I take some L on a bunch of cards, the Soto, the price that I got for the Soto is actually, other than the comp, is the lowest sale of that card in all of 2021 and all of 2022, right? So,
for sure. Hyung, I want to get into your trade, which is a monster trade too. But before you do, just a couple of things I noticed from the card show. It did feel smaller to me as well, like John was saying. I don't know. Like I think I was walking around, especially on the last day of the show, and I was going to the same booths over and over. Like I found myself going to the same booths. I'm like, okay. Whereas the one in November, I felt like I didn't see everything. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it did feel a bit smaller, and that's not too surprising, just the way the hobby's going these days. But hopefully it rebounds. And I don't know. There's a lot of hockey still in Toronto Sports Card Expo.
I noticed that too.
A ton. I mean, I think I mentioned this to you Hyung, at the show. Like, if they got rid of like even half the hockey dealers, just the guys that sell purely hockey, like I wouldn't have been walking around nearly as much. It's just like going from one booth to the other that sold things other than hockey. Like it just took time to do that as well. But yeah, I guess it's to be expected. And this is you're taking the point of view from a guy that's mainly into baseball and basketball. So other hockey card collectors aren't complaining, I'm sure, at all with the Sports Card Expo.
Surprisingly, there's a lot of soccer too, I find.
More of it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, maybe that's more of a Toronto thing, but I'm noticing it a lot locally, at least. I'm not too sure, outside of Toronto, but that's what I noticed at the show. Everybody's like, "Where's your soccer?" I'm like, you know what? I have a sunny national landmark. That's about it, and it ain't for sale.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right, Hyung, tell us your monster trade.
I actually had a couple. One, actually, I ended up getting rid of my red Bo Bichette. I ended up Red Wave. Yeah, I cashed out on that. And I thought I did well because I was in for $675. I ended up landing a Luka Silver PSA 10 and an Anthony Edwards PSA Silver 10. So it was about four. Yeah. So it was, I cashed out at about $4,000. So I was happy with that. And then I also made a huge trade, threw in a little bit of cash. I had to trade a Luka Optic Auto PSA 9 rookie year, as well as a Jordan Poole finals contender out of 49 auto, which I received in a trade. I didn't want the card, so I just received it. I got good value on it. And then I traded those 2 slabs and a bit of cash for. I picked up a 2021 Topps Chrome Max Verstappen, the Ray Wave, 1 of 1. Yeah, so
Damn.
which is
A
crazy,
1 of 1.
but it's not the portrait, which is the more desired Verstappen in the set. But for me, I believe in the future of F1 and being able to kind of move a card maybe that I wanted to. It's kind of similar to John's move, I guess, in the refractor, where I wanted to just liquidate some cards, and throw it in something that potentially might be a really good investment in the long run, right? And kind of just enjoy the card, and knowing that I'm never probably ever gonna get to even purchase or bid on a 1 of 1 second year of the F1 set.
Sure.
So that was my train of thought. I thought it was a good opportunity for me. I knew that I wasn't going to get that opportunity again. So yeah, I made a few deals, and obviously the Soto was a big one as well. So yeah, I was quite busy throughout the weekend.
Yeah, that was a beauty.
Yeah.
The Max Verstappen. He's the guy right now too, right?
He is the guy. Yeah. There's some hype around it, and then the price was right. Like I said, if it's somewhat, affordable, and I could move some cards into that value, I have no problem doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Because, for me, it's like, I love the Luka Optic Auto. I think it's one of his greatest cards, just because he doesn't have too many on-card autos, and the print run is super, super low. So there was that, but I feel like that market is sitting so sideways that, it's kind of like, I don't think you're going to see a big bump in anytime soon on Luka cards. So that's also why I kind of went, the other way and into a whole different market. Because I believe the F1 market is still like untouched, to be honest. I just think people don't realize that it is the world's largest sport, right, from a global perspective. And we still haven't even, scratched the surface. And as more collectors come into that, F1 market, I feel like they're going to increase the print runs again, right? So like that's why the 2020 Topps Chrome F1 will be kind of like the set.
It's
right,
gonna be valuable.
Like, it's going to be very valuable. So they increased the print runs in 2021. So it's still an awesome set. I believe there's a lot of big cards out of there as well. So yeah, I think it was a good long-term move for me overall.
Yeah, it was well done. Well done.
Maybe you should go talk to fellow Korean. She collects cards because she's big into F1.
Oh, is she?
To work a deal. She'll probably want that card bad.
Oh, really? I don't know if it's too desirable right now, but I'm sure like down the road, as Max, has a lot more victories and success in his career. I think you're going to look back and say, you know what, there might be a lot of value that way.
Yeah. I think it was a great move. I mean, he's one of the main characters. I will admit I am a bit of a skeptic in the long term of F1, way more so than any of you guys. But he's one of the main characters, and you're talking a 1 of 1 card. Like, how many Topps Chrome 1 of 1s are there for Max Verstappen? 2022 and 2021 included, right? So you're hanging on to one of the select few, like, high percentile Max Verstappen cards. Right?
If it was basketball, there would be like 17 1 of 1s.
Yeah, I know.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a good trade. Yeah, I ended up making one trade myself, and it was for my Bo Bichette Refractor BGS 9.5, plus my Lewis Robert PSA 10 first Bowman auto.
Okay.
So I added those two for an Aaron Judge first Bowman Chrome Refractor BGS 9.5. So straight up, 2 cards for one, no cash, and the reason why I did it was like, I think in this market, I love Bichette. We talk about Bichette all the time on this podcast. We love Lewis Robert. We talk about him all the time.
Yeah.
But in this market, guys are still trying to prove their worth, and I believe in their talent. Their prices are going down right now, at least, right?
Right.
And Aaron Judge has more of a track record, has I believe higher potential with the number of home runs he can hit. Very marketable, plays for the Yankees. All these things going for him, and I think if everything breaks right, he can have a pretty historic season this year. He just hit a home run today, so that's 22 now, leading the Major League Baseball. If he hits 60 plus, like that's what I'm banking on.
That's big time.
Then things start to get, he gets in the news a lot at that point.
Right.
And especially playing for the Yankees, especially breaking Roger Maris's record, who also played for the Yankees. Like I could see it's all about the narrative at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that move. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I'm happy with it. Probably, I definitely, like you were saying, John, like, if you look at how much you paid for the card and how much I sold it for, I did sell it at a loss, but it's the same thing for the Judge. Like that's come down since its all-time highs. You know what I mean? It kind of balances out a little bit that way. And then that guy also sold or bought my Zion Williamson light blue select, which I got graded SGC 9.5. He just paid $500 cash.
Sweet.
So I got some liquid from that. and I thought it was a fair deal all around. But
I think long term that's great. And as you see kind of like the market go down, you're gonna see like almost like a shaking. So like you'll see a lot more correction of true value on everything. We're talking whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, cryptos, you'll see a true value. So I think a good move is like those kind of like long-term moves to say, okay, what is really worth, kind of like a future investment, right? So I think there's a lot more speculation on the Bo Bichette and Lewis Robert, like in terms of kind of like that lull we talk about. If they don't perform and keep up with their with the MLB superstar kind of numbers, their prices are just going to continually dip. Whereas like now, you see the true value of guys like Aaron Judge and, Bryce Harper's and the Machados. Like, I think there's all that, right? So I like that move. I'm starting to do that a lot more with my lower end to trade into kind of like more long-term plays. Yeah,
I think that's a good play. All right. Before we close off this show, just want to also quickly ask you guys, any improvements for the Sports Card Expo or even card shows in general that you have off the top of your head? I know I'm just throwing it out there. For me, to save on the walking, I don't know if you can do this, but if you can group all the dealers with the majority of hockey cards together, or oh, here's the baseball card section. These guys are primarily baseball card dealers with basketball. I know some dealers sell all four sports, but there are a lot of dealers at the expo that just sold hockey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe make a hockey card section for the save me a ton of walking.
I think some people like the walking because they need the exercise. Right?
I got my steps in. All right. I got my Apple Watch. I got my steps in for sure. But
yeah, I would say make it 3 days instead of 4.
Yeah.
I think that VIP day is kind of like overrated, to be honest. There was literally nobody there, and it was just a big toll, a waste of a day in my opinion. I wish they did 3 days and call it a show. So
yeah, right. Johnny, any thoughts?
Well, I only speak from my side of the table, but I think it's kind of like what Hyung mentioned. I feel like if you're motivated to sell as a dealer, some of the pricing, right? Like, I mean, I walked around and it was very brief, but even if something caught my eye, the prices were so high that like I didn't feel like I had the energy to even start discussing or go down the path of like, hey, would you want to look at these cards and maybe trade or talk? Like, I wasn't in the mood, and some of the cards, I already had a card in mind that I really wanted, so this was sort of like window shopping. But like literally, it wasn't. Almost 90% of the cards that I'm seeing, or the dealers, it wasn't even at comps or like maybe part below comps. As I was window shopping, I don't think I saw any steals and deals. You could probably get steals and deals as you talk to them and you work it. But, I had the unique experience this time of literally only having a couple of hours. And maybe that's the case for many visitors this time, is they're only in there for 1 or 2 hours or 3 hours at the most, right? So you don't really have that luxury of going all out. So
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe some little tip to the, and Hyung sits on both sides of the table, so he can correct me if I'm offside. But I feel like, with some cards, like if you're already motivated to sell, like price them at a pretty, getting close to what you think it should sell for, and then maybe you'll catch random buyers walking around and be like, oh shoot, okay, there's a price. Maybe I'll go after that, right?
Yeah.
No, I had a few people like they noted that, like they're like, oh, this is a good deal. Like they knew already, right? So I think that helps. Like you don't have to put everything on sale, right? Have a couple slabs that are like, whoa, like this is a pretty good deal.
Sure.
And have your other stuff kind of like overpriced if you're not like motivated to sell as much, right? So
Yeah. The only good thing about that is like if you see a table where, like you see a Luka Doncic silver prism, what the comp is just by memory. And they're marking it up for 2x. You're like, okay, this is not even a table worth staying at. You know what I mean? Just move on, right?
That's
true.
Right.
If it's close to the comp, then you're like, okay, maybe there's other deals to be had.
Right.
So
maybe that's the point. Maybe that's more the point. I think if you have a rare card and it's priced high, cool. I don't have an issue with that. But if it's clearly like a very liquid card that moves every day, like a base PSA 10 Tatis, or $300 exactly, or like a Lucas Silver.
I've seen them, yeah.
Like that, I think, Clark, you're right. If you see those priced high, you're like, yeah, you're not even motivated to like stop there, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for the Sports Card Expo in Toronto, like the liquid card or somewhat liquid is the Austin Matthews SB Future. Right, if it's over 12,000, that table's a ripoff. There's like cards. There are people selling the exact same card for 10,000 or less. So
Right.
Anyway, we'll end this show off here. Again, we appreciate all the listeners of this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we appreciate you giving us 5 stars. It helps us out a lot. And we'll see you on Tuesday for our next full episode. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.